Hello, and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And I am Jessica Tercero.
And this week, we watched The Wizard of Oz and the Wiz!
Of Oz.
And we're actually joined by a very special guest this week, Dr. Amber Jones, PhD. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Yeah, that's my name. My PhD is in education, but I have many imaginary PhDs that relate to all of my very strong feelings about film and cartoons. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so excited.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I know, because Eric and I have been talking about it, and The Wiz is also one of his favorite movies, and I've never seen it.
Is it? I had no idea.
And he always talks
cool.
about it, and I'm just like, he's shown me so many clips, like the Scarecrow song, or Michael Jackson. I've seen that so many times. I've seen Ease on Down the Road, and I know I've been waiting to watch it. So thank you for kind of letting this happen in that way, where it's like, yes, because Amber was like, oh, I want to do The Wiz, and I was like, yes, let's do it finally.
I feel like my words were, there's no one with a stronger opinion about The Wiz than me.
Yes.
Please include me. I promise you, I have so many thoughts.
Awesome.
I'm so excited. This is going to be great. So, Eric, you said that you had not seen The Wiz. I haven't seen The Wiz. And we hadn't seen the original Wizard of Oz since we were 8 years old, right? So this is kind of with fresh eyes for us. And Amber, you hadn't seen The Wizard of Oz before.
No, I had never seen The Wizard of Oz. And I had also chosen for my life to have never seen it. That is just part of the deep feeling I have for The Wiz. But I was like, you know what? I should watch it. I should. It would be nice. But without this as a reason, I probably never would have.
Yeah. It's one of those movies that's unless it's on really for Christmas, or you're going to see an old playing of it at some old theater. I don't know. I feel like it's just not really a part of the zeitgeist, apart from it being this historic piece of filmmaking in the early 20th century, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think other than the Somewhere Over the Rainbow song and just the visuals of it, I think is what everybody kind of associates with.
Yeah. And I feel like it's one of those movies like Star Wars where you can grow up and never even really know that it was a movie, but still know things about it. So I kind of felt I know enough. I remember stills from the movie in my history books, and I scapegoated the movie as being this representation of okay, I get it. This is your culture, and seeing The Wiz as my culture and wanting to just put more into that than this other version. Yeah,
definitely. I think that's a great segue into talking about the first film.
Yeah,
and
perfect.
Then I'm so excited. I'm so excited to talk about The Wiz. Man. Okay, let's do this.
Let's do it. After attempting to run away from home, Dorothy and her dog Toto encounter a traveling fortune teller who, after reading a fake fortune, advises them to return home as a storm begins brewing. As they arrive home, the house gets tossed up into a tornado. Dorothy wakes up in the magical land of Oz, having landed on the Wicked Witch of the East. Galinda the Good Witch informs her that if she wants to return home, she must follow the yellow brick road to meet the wizard who will grant her travel.
Along the way, she meets a scarecrow, a tin man, and a cowardly lion who are all hoping the wizard will help them as well. Through it all, the Wicked Witch of the West is trying to capture Dorothy and Toto for the death of her sister. The wizard ends up being a fake, the Wicked Witch melts away, and Dorothy clicks her heels together 3 times and goes back home. She made it back, and it was all a dream. Or was it?
Bum, bum, bum. I know that's not the general cadence of that. It's not a twist. Is it real or was it? But I mean,
Well, I feel like we were talking about like this movie as being like a cultural touchstone where like you see so much of what this movie has done like littered throughout all of pop culture. And I think that that is one of the big takeaways, right? Everything is like, oh, but was it all a dream, right? Like even Breaking Bad had that alternate ending where it was like he woke up and he was still Malcolm in the Middle dad, you know? So I think that this is the movie that like that's one of the things that really sets it apart.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, even just the generalized, like, very succinct tropes of the characters where it's like, I'm this character and I'm looking for this. Wonderful. I'm this character and I'm looking for this. Like, it's very clear, very succinct, very structured. It's a very clear and concise structure that's very easy to follow in a way that I think a lot of storytelling. I mean, obviously, The Wizard of Oz is not the first story ever told, but just in the sense of like modern storytelling, it kind of takes a beat off the book and then works it into a more nuanced or mysterious style of like introducing character tropes and like characters within a narrative, you know?
Yeah, and since we're on that topic, one of the things that I really liked about this movie, because like, again, like watching it before was all like, oh, cool, there's a song and there's like, or there's a dog, like that's what I remember. But it's really cool because the things that each of these characters, like all of their motivations are is like, you know, they actually possess those things. So like the Scarecrow is actually really smart and he's the one that always comes up with the plans, you know, to save Dorothy or things like that. The Lion is always the one that's up at the forefront and like, okay, like I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna walk in there and save Dorothy. And then the Tin Man is also like, he has that heart, he has that feeling, and he kind of like uses that to unify everybody. So really what these characters are looking for is validation. And so like, I think that this story did a really good job of being really subtle and being just like, you already have these things, but not like beating you over the head with it like a lot of movies do. So I liked that. I appreciated that. I did not know that when I was 9 years old. So.
Oh, same. Yeah. Yeah. I guess I hadn't realized when I was a kid that was the sort of takeaway, that it was in you the entire time. I was just kind of like, oh, I guess they got it and they're moving on. Great. As a kid. But now it's just sort of like the masquerading it or just getting validation and confirmation that like you are worth it at your very core. And sometimes it just takes a moment of introspection to be like, oh, I guess I do have that. And here I go into the world. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I did think it was really shitty that like at the end it was just like some fucking dude that was like, oh, cool. You had this in you all along. But because you need to know, here's a diploma that you didn't earn. Here's a Medal of Honor. Here's this, like these little tokens to be like, let you hold your head up high. And I thought I was just kind of like, okay, you're some dude from Kansas, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's one way that I heavily like The Wiz better. Yeah. In just selling that part of the story and doing it in a way that makes sense. Because yeah, like you pointed out, like he said like, yeah, you always had this, but he gave them like little superficial tokens to like show them. And I'm like, okay, that kind of goes against the point though, right? That they had it all along, but then also you can remember it this way. But like that being said, I was very surprised how much I really enjoyed The Wizard of Oz. Like I was really surprised how much I enjoyed the way that they told the story. Like I thought that there was no like wasted time in there. And so, yeah, I guess going back to what you were saying earlier is that knowing the importance of this movie in our culture and knowing all of the ways that it's been like, you know, remixed and redone, I expected it to feel more stale as I was watching it for the first time today. But it didn't. Yeah, it was a real story that like these were real characters and they built out their personalities through the performance. And I enjoyed it. I was 100% surprised. Like I said, I had chosen never to watch this movie on
I super thought it was going to be stale too. I was like, I haven't gone back to this, there's the YouTube clips. I can just watch that. It's fine. But like, yeah, I was super, super surprised with just that really solid storytelling. And I do agree with you. I think that The Wiz did such a better job of like the end was like, I really liked the way that they wrapped all that up. I think they took this story and really elevated it, but we'll get into that. But it felt good. Like, I don't know, watch this movie again.
It's very much The Wizard of Oz is completely perfectly made for children. And like The Wiz is a different story. It's not like it doesn't necessarily have to be for children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, The Wizard of Oz, it very clearly, because I know it's like an adaptation of an old story that was adapted into a play and then what have you. This feels, like you said, a storybook. It feels very much for children. Again, the way, like we were saying earlier about how they develop their characters, like this character is so-and-so and this is them. It's very clear, cut and dry. Mm-hmm. Here's who this is. Here's who we're following. Here's where they need to go. They have to get to X, Y, and Z. Here's X, Y, and Z scenes. Now she's back home. Good night. Like, it's very clear, cut, dry, concise. Whereas The Wiz is not that. The Wiz is so much more developed and nuanced and like just atmospheric. It's way more of a realized story, not just like a storybook narrative.
Yeah, like depending on how you approach The Wiz, you at the end you don't have a nice like little storybook ending. You like I have just as often been like in tears as I've been like laughing out loud at the end of it. And so I feel like that is a very good distinction as well. But like both endings, very, very good still. And I'm surprised to be saying that.
Yeah. Well, because even in the moments, like you have these little twists where it's like, oh, okay, they beat the witch and now they're going to go back and they're going to get their thing. And then he's like, actually, no, I'm a scammer. Go away and come back tomorrow. And they're like, no, we're here right now. He's like, yeah, I know, but like, just come back tomorrow. And they're like, no, what are you hiding? Like, why? What's going on? Like, what do you do? Are you kidding me? And so there's that. And then there's like that hot air balloon the next day where she's like, yeah, I'm finally getting home. And then Toto jumps out and she has to chase him. So there's all these sort of like misleading gags of like, she's almost there. She's so close. And then you're just kind of snatching it away real quick. But the way it's wrapped up is very like, it's nice. Like, yeah, just go home, tap your heels, find your place. And then she wakes up and then all the characters are there. And it's kind of like, oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was nice right now in 2020, right?
Yes.
But yeah, I want to briefly mention how you were saying, like, he was telling her, like, oh yeah, go do this, oh, go do that. And it's in both The Wiz and The Wizard, he was trying to give Dorothy what he thought was an impossible task, right? Just to get him off of his back. How women are always given impossible tasks and trying to have to do this. And it's like, oh, wait, actually, even though you did that, you still don't get what we promised you in the end because it was all made up. Thanks for doing that for me.
Yeah, thanks for taking care of my biggest problem. See ya.
Yeah.
I'm going to go right off of my hot air balloon now. Like in that moment too, like he's trying to build her up. He was still like trying to center himself too. He wasn't like, oh great, you can go home. He's like, well, this is what I did and this is blah, blah, blah. And he's like tooting his own horn the whole time. And he's like, oh yeah, but you can come too. You're like, you're on this balloon too. It's chill. And I was like, okay.
Like, who knows where we're going to actually go? I don't know how to work this thing.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. And also, like, on that same note where he was like, he came into, like, a coward, like, from Kansas, landed there and was like, oh, I'm this person. Everybody's like, oh, you're a wizard. And he's like, yeah, I'm a wizard. Cool. Yeah, I can do this. And like gave himself all of this power or didn't deny this power that other people were giving him. And so like he is just a bad person throughout the whole thing.
What was a delightful surprise is that these were really amazing comedic performances. Like there were so many moments where I was like literally laughing out loud. And I'm like, I didn't expect this at all.
Yes. Well, just the performances of the stylized choreography of character with like the scarecrow and the way he would just like fall and hop back up and kind of like spin split, like all that stuff. And then even with the Tin Man, that leaning gag when they're like trying to catch him on one side and then they're going to the other side and then they're going to, oh, wait, no.
are wonderful.
It was great because to me too, even in those moments, I was like looking for wires, and I'm like, I think this is just incredibly well thought out and like succinct choreography is what this feels. I mean, it's what it feels like, you know.
Yeah, I felt the same like when Dorothy picks an apple and then they're like in a fight with the tree all of a sudden.
So
this is hilarious.
That part scared me as a kid. I remember when I was younger, as soon as the trees started like flailing and throwing their apples, I was freaked out. And then especially when the Wicked Witch shows up on the cabin and there's more red smoke, I was like, I don't like this. This is a little too much. Oh my God.
I think they used a lot of theater, like being a theater kid, right? Like I was like, oh, here's the trapdoor, here's this, and the choreography and the big and the like, and like even the sets and everything. Like I know it was like a soundstage and stuff, but like it still holds up. Like it still looks good. Like it doesn't look too campy or it doesn't look like too, like they did a really damn good job with all of that.
Yeah,
like it wasn't sleazy camp. It wasn't too much, but it was like just enough to be hilarious with how silly and ridiculous it was.
Yeah.
And it made me think of like there are so many like fantasy movies that are like shot on a stage like this that people look so much more stiff.
Yeah.
And it is not believable at all, but this is kind of believable in this nice little world they created for us.
Yeah.
And that's just fun.
It was super impressive, just those small moments. Like that trapdoor with the red smoke, each time I was so impressed. Like, yeah, we know what's happening, but like a kid with a magic trick, I was like, like, that was great. Oh my gosh, like this looks so real.
And I think like the sets and all those like practical like little magic tricks and stuff that they did like really helped, like you guys were saying earlier, how it like made it feel like a storybook. So I think that they did a really good job of bringing that to film. And I was surprised to find that this wasn't the first time. The 1930s was not the first time that this was filmed. Like it was a silent film in 1910, and then it was another film in like 1925. And I'm like, why? Like, I don't know. Did you watch any? I know I sent you, Eric, the little clip.
I haven't watched it, but just the clip, it looks a little, I mean, in the way that like some early turn of the last century costumes are terrifying. Just in general, like that's sort of the same aesthetic that I'm getting as far as like it being a little creepy.
That movie is like 110 years old now. Isn't that weird?
That's nuts.
Weird.
Honestly, just time just keeps on slipping, you guys. Into the future. Eric was telling me this fun, well, not so fun. It's not tragic. It's just kind of like, oh, that sucks. Story. Apparently the actor who originally was cast as the Scarecrow, he was a dancer. And so he created these mannerisms that were sort of like dance based, and like the character nuance was performative dance. When they cast the actor who ended up playing the Scarecrow, he said that he wanted to play the Scarecrow. So that actor was like, okay, I'll do the Tin Man. That's fine. So they switched. But I guess in some of the early character testing, they used a paint that was poisonous. And so the actor who was doing the Tin Man ended up getting sick and had to drop out of the movie because of it.
Yeah, it was like aluminum powder that they used and it got in his lungs and coated his lungs. And this is a problem that was also with the Wiz too. They used the same like aluminum powder, and he ended up in a fucking iron lung, you guys, because they used the same stuff. Yeah, like
Nipsey Russell?
Yeah. The other person that suffered from that was the woman that played the Wicked Witch too. Like, so her skin, like that makeup would not come off fully. And it was so toxic that she couldn't eat and had to like go on a liquid diet for weeks. Then also she caught on fire during one of those scenes, and she suffered like 2nd and 3rd degree burns as a result of like just a lot of this negligence, you know, because there was no OSHA, there was none of this, right? Oh, and the snow was asbestos, you know, like
yes.
The Scarecrow, the prosthetics that they used for his face, like the makeup, were there for like a year after. He looked like the Scarecrow kind of for a whole year because of some of the residual makeup stuff that happened.
Wow.
Nuts. No, thank you.
That's She caught on fire.
She caught on fire.
Oh my god.
2nd and 3rd degree burns.
I can't even believe that. And then the asbestos thing really got me too. Just like, lay in this field. We're going to throw asbestos on you. Like, pretend you're asleep. Like, woo, here comes asbestos. Like, that is
covered in it.
Covered.
Yeah. Like, they breathe some of that in. Ugh.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So rough.
We now really learn more just about old Hollywood death traps, and because there's so many movies that we know and love from this era, and I'm like, man, was everybody just like killing themselves just to create this thing?
Truly, and I'm sure too, especially with how like this is a real big first for the industry in general. So they're spending like literal millions of dollars on this, which is huge amounts of money. And this is like the first time we're seeing that much money shoveled into entertainment like this. So I'm assuming they're kind of like, whatever way we can get the shot, we're going to just do it because time is money. We're shoveling all this money. We don't care if these people get hurt. They're replaceable.
I mean, truly, yeah. And like the way that they treated the cast too, like, okay, let's get into this because I did some research on that too. So first, let's go with one of the less problematic things, maybe. I don't know. They're all problematic. But Victor Fleming hit Julie Garland during filming. He like straight up smacked her because she like the lion walked out and she was giggling and she just was having a great time and couldn't stop. And he just like took her aside and smacked her and said, "It is time to work." And like, I was like, damn. And they already made her, she was like 16 or 17 when this was being filmed. They forced her to lose like at least 15 pounds and made her wear a super tight corset so she would appear younger. So for all of this that she had to endure, she was only making $500 a week when her male counterparts were making $3,000. And she's the person, the story is about her. She has the fucking voice. She has like the everything. So like, that's not even half. And then her dog was paid $125 per week. The people that played the Munchkins were paid $50. The dog was paid better than them. And like, I'm getting into this. I was like, what the fuck is happening? So, and then like Dorothy and Scarecrow were originally supposed to be romantically involved. So like when you look at like some of the scenes and some of the ways that they wrote that too, it's like when she like goes to him and she's like, "I'm going to miss you most of all."
I mean, it's so emblematic of these toxic environments. Like when you're hearing stuff like about Kubrick being a complete piece of shit to like his actors, it's unfortunate to say that it's not surprising. Like that sucks that is the case. Fuck him. And also fuck the entire patriarchy for that. Like, I know that they were sort of main characters, but she got paid $500. They got paid $3,000. That's she is the lead. If there is a lead in Wizard of Oz, it is Dorothy. She's the lead.
But it's so interesting looking back now because we're in a time where we're putting more energy into like interrogating how the patriarchy has like shaped not only like how Hollywood does its business, but also how it shaped all of our lives, like consuming these stories and who wrote them and stuff. And so it's just really interesting thinking about like, I'm always going to think about that now for The Wizard of Oz and how that necessary shift should be in our consciousness.
Yeah.
But also what does that mean?
Yeah. What does a conscious, necessary, like cognizant shift in the way that we consume media look like?
Yes. Like,
we saw the fun dress and the pretty shoes and like it's fun playing this and this is a cute children's movie, but what about like the children who are growing up now that should grow up with the necessary context and how does that shape their world?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
I think that's like we were talking about this a couple of podcasts ago where it's like, how can you separate the creator or the experience of creating a thing from the art or the creation itself? And I think that's like a really big, like I can't go back and watch Tarantino films I can't do it. Like, I can't, like, after learning what I learned about Jackie Chan, I can't fucking watch him anymore, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and I've been having this, like, you said earlier, Eric, that you're not surprised and it sucks to not be surprised. And I was having this conversation with one of my friends recently, and I was like, I don't think I want to say that anymore. Like, me personally, because I think that works to normalize that behavior, even if it's not surprising, even if we know that that's happening, by saying, this really sucks. I'm not surprised. But, like, you know, when all the Burger Record stuff was happening and things like that, right? Like, you know, being a woman in music, I know this, you know, I've seen this happen. I've been a victim of that. So, like, seeing that, it's like, I don't think I personally can say, I'm not surprised, because, again, that just works to normalize this stuff. And I want to be surprised. I don't want to be desensitized like I am to so much of what's happening. And I have to, you know, we have to stay mad. We have to stay vulnerable and emotional. And because when we stop, all we're doing is just allowing that to continue, you know, and giving it a pass.
No, you're totally right. Yeah. I'll walk that back. Well, just not walk that back, but at least just apologize for it, because 100% using language like that absolutely leads to the normalization of it. Because if you're responding to something that should be in the culture and be an abhorrent thing, like it should be this huge, huge negative, if the response to that is, oh, I'm not surprised, and then that becomes your response again, it does just desensitize and make okay these things that should not be. So yeah, absolutely. That is disgusting. And that is trash. Because I felt the same way with the whole burger stuff. Like, when people were coming out about that, whenever I would hear somebody say, I'm not surprised, my instinct in my head, I was like, then why didn't you say something? If you're not surprised and it's something that bothers you, where was that work before this? You know what I mean? So 100%. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
And I'm really excited that we're having these conversations, because I think having these conversations, and, like, you know, they're not black and white, you know, they're not like, there's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of people and things and emotions and, like, a lot of stuff to consider. And I think by not giving that weight, like, you know, because, like, yeah, like, Tarantino sucks, or yeah, whatever. But look at how many jobs were created, or look at, like, you know, somebody might have found Uma Thurman's character, I forget her name right now, but might have found her, like, really empowering, you know, like, so it's like, at what point can you take the media away and just allow it to exist? There's, like, there's a form of philosophy where, like, the artist is dead, so the work stands on its own. I forget what that is, but I think that there is a lot of value in both approaches when it comes to media, for sure.
I also, because, you know, we think about this a lot because, again, we're in a time where we're putting so much more into acknowledging what has been open secrets and deciding this is not okay for our culture anymore. And I have felt for a long time that I am able to appreciate this piece of art and appreciate what it means without feeling like I'm glorifying that artist that did terrible things. Like, when I think about Bill Cosby, like, I still see the Cosby Show as, this is an important cultural artifact. And like, if I were to see it on TV, which I don't think they play it on TV anymore, it wouldn't upset me to see it, you know?
Yeah.
But that only can exist if it always, always, always exists with that context, you know? Like, it can never just be that anymore. It still has that context. And so, like, that's kind of how I hold myself accountable for when I want to, like, watch Kill Bill or something. Like, okay, like, I can enjoy this, but I also always have to think about the extra layer of, these are also the things that were going on when they created this art. And that is always a part of it. I think that even that has its limits, because there is, like, art that can stand on its own, but then there's also art where they've also put in some, like, signs and, like, themes that hinted towards the disgusting things going on in the background. And so, like, that's where I draw the line. Like, I was like, but I am not going to entertain this because now I know what they were doing.
Yeah. And I think that that's kind of that gray area that I was talking about too. Like you can't just say yes or no because like, then ultimately I think you're hurting yourself, right? And I think to think in things in absolutes is just not great. But yeah, like I definitely had to do exactly what you said, like watching The Wiz and seeing Michael Jackson. And I think allowing something to exist and having that knowledge and still holding that while you are consuming that media or enjoying that media and everything. I think that was really well said.
And Michael Jackson's performance in The Wiz is so perfect because of that context for me, that I feel like, because I think he was like, 18, 19 when he was doing it, that it's through his performance, you see this like vulnerability in him. And I think that is only amplified by his larger legacy. And so I don't know, like I experience it as a positive thing, even knowing that I'm like acknowledging these other horrible things that he had done in his life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, and again, because of that sort of shading of context with all of these things, it does reinterpret the thing itself, like you were saying. It reinterprets, I mean, specifically if we're talking about an actor playing a character, it reinterprets motive and therefore kind of reinterprets the performance as a whole. So you're kind of seeing a different version of what that performance was and is. In the same way that like a musical artist, if you go back and listen to the song, say that song impacted you in a way that was so emotional or comforted you in a place of vulnerability, that could still be there, but maybe it's like toned down or it's not as palpable just because of the negative aspects of that understanding in that context change it completely. And I think with Michael Jackson in this, I know we're not on The Wiz yet, but it absolutely does. And I mean, so I can't necessarily say that because I didn't see this movie before that context had been given. So my only understanding of this performance is now, today. But even with that, it adds this whole other layer for it. I mean, apart from it just being fantastic, because I really like it. He did such a great job. And that song is so good. And just everything that it means. I really want to dig into his character in the next one. Just like literally reaching into yourself, sort of like that whole thing. So good. But yeah, it is. I think it's a wonderful thing moving forward. Just recontextualizing everything.
Yeah.
Right. Like looking at this and understanding, like looking at The Wizard of Oz, this piece, and understanding that it is riddled with so much misogyny and so much abuse and so much badness, seeing it for what it is as a piece of art, but also understanding that it is a product of badness. In the same way that a lot of early movies are. I mean, even movies now, like there is still so much in the industry, so much rampant abuse. So understanding that within its context and being able to just still enjoy it to some degree.
And I think that's one of the things that makes Dorothy, kind of pulling it back full circle, I think that's one of the things that makes her as a heroine and as just like a lead actor so great, is because you notice that she is constantly challenging her perception of reality, right? Like she's very yes and she's like walking along and she's okay, cool, I'm here, I'm in this thing, okay, and she just kind of like goes with the flow and she figures it out. She's always kind of fluid in that way, right? She's never like so rigid that she can't accept something. She walks along and then there's a scarecrow and it's like, oh, okay, yeah. And then the care that she takes in that, because she's willing to change her perception of what things are and how they should be, she's able to approach friendship in the same way, where she's so respectful. Like the way that she talks to Scarecrow is like a model for how you should be friends with somebody, right? It's like she comes up to him and she says, how can I help you? Would you like to come with me? I can't guarantee that you'll get what you want, and I do have some bad things around me, but I am inviting you to do this. You don't have to. And she's not trying to force him and not trying to be like, oh, poor you, or like put him down for the position that he's in or anything. She's being so gentle in the way that she is approaching friendship.
Like, that's such an interesting juxtaposition with The Wiz, because like I agree, in The Wizard of Oz, like Dorothy, she goes forward, you know, like no real fear. Like there are moments where she starts to be afraid of something very specific, but like she doesn't have a fear of just like everything in front of her. She's like, oh, okay, so now let's do this now, I guess. And I would say that that is so different from Dorothy in The Wiz, where she has a general anxiety about everything. And I also like how she like approaches her friendships, but it's a very different way in that sense, where like Dorothy, who is this 12-year-old in The Wizard of Oz, you know, is still very like plucky and not afraid of these things coming up for her. Whereas like Dorothy in The Wiz, who's 25, is afraid of everything, but still, there's still like a consistency in the character. And I just think it's funny because I would not describe Dorothy in The Wiz as brave so much as just like someone who kept going, yes, but I don't see her approaching the world the same way as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I think what's interesting too, just specifically looking at their ages, is there is sort of like a ignorant courage that Dorothy has for being so young and not really necessarily like, we see her first instant, she's leaving and she's running away, not really knowing the hardships of the world outside of the context of this one small place in Kansas. Whereas Dorothy in The Wiz, I believe she's 24.
Yeah.
25. She knows the hardships of young adulthood. She's experiencing it in that moment. And, you know, there's this opportunity for her to be a teacher, but that means she has to go somewhere she's never been. And even going south of 125th Street, which I'm assuming was still in the same borough, even that by itself is difficult. Understanding the hardships and the difficulty of the world. You know, so it is there is one incredibly ignorant interpretation of just youth versus a more enlightened, more understood version of the world is hard. I don't know if I'm ready for this.
Even with like those very different approaches, both characters are still so like you identify with them so much still.
As a young woman, you're always kind of like told to be very nice and very polite and be trusting and do all of these things. And I think that Dorothy does a really good job, or like she really inhabits that as the 12-year-old, right, in The Wizard of Oz. And then, yeah, like well, first, I really want to get into Dorothy in the next one for sure. But she does, you know, like there's a point where you go from a girl to being a woman and you don't see things the same way. And everything is, you know, like there are people that are out there to hurt you, you know, you have to be cautious. You have to keep yourself safe, you know? And so that caution, that switch, I really identified with that. Like now I didn't even think about that until you had mentioned that. And I was like, wow, yeah, that's spot on. That's great.
Yeah, same.
What else do we have for the 1930s one?
The costumes were amazing.
Yes.
Didn't expect to love them as much because I had seen pictures before, but like in the whole motion of it all, it's so much different. I'm like, man, like I love the sets. I love the costumes.
Yeah.
Oh, truly. I mean, all of the sets were also just incredible. Everything looked so, I mean, obviously of the world, but also stylized in such a way that felt like more than just of the world. It was so like, it was really great. And I mean, that on top of like the specificity of the wigs, say in Munchkinland versus the fashions of the folks who live in Oz, like you got these very particular and stylized versions. And especially too, in the conversation of like capitalism, which I will get into more in the second one, but just looking at like the wealth of one city versus the wealth of another and what those two things look like. Juxtaposed between the two.
Okay, did you guys also think that Emerald City was super socialist? You walked in there, and once you were allowed in, right? Then it was like, cool, let's get our hair done. Let's give you some new outfits. Let's talk, let's do this. It was very great. And nobody was asking for money. Everybody seemed very equal there. Except for the wizard, of course.
I don't think so, only because they were only let in when he saw the slippers. And so that to him was like a sign of wealth. To some degree. So my interpretation of it was that, I guess. I mean, obviously the slippers are from the Wicked Witch of the East. These are very iconic shoes in this world. They're recognizable. People know what's happening. But it felt like they were the people of the day in Oz only because of that.
Yeah, to me, it felt like elective kind of socialism, like you were saying, right? Where it's you have to have show that you have value in order to be allowed to live in this type of society. And
yes.
So that's why that wasn't for everybody. And that's why the shoes were the ticket in, because she clearly had something that nobody else had, or had kind of proven herself in some sort of way, even though Dorothy accidentally kills 2 people in this, and we don't even talk about it. And she's just kind of when she drops the house, she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then everybody's like, no, but it's fine. And she's like, okay, cool. But we don't see her reckon with we never see her reckon with the fact that I just offed somebody, and I just offed somebody again. Whoops. She doesn't even, she just kind of okay, next scene.
You're kind of seeing these characters shimmy past the trauma induction that is happening. She sees that she killed somebody, and everyone's like, no, it's fine. She was bad. And she's like, are you sure? She's dead. And they're like, no, we're having a party because of it. Don't even worry about it. We're literally celebrating now because you're
Girl,
so great.
We love
and
you.
This is so it is so confusing in so many ways. I'm sure she's just but I killed somebody. They're like, sweetie, stop. Don't even worry. And you're like, oh my God, I can't do this.
Oh, here's another thing that I remember. After she kills the first witch, there's a coroner, there's paper. Oh, yeah! You have killed a person. An official had to come out and issue a death certificate. Which
also just the costuming of that and the jubilation of it within that moment, where the coroner is just she's dead most certainly and completely, and everyone's like, yeah. It is very silly, and it is very macabre. It's very dark. Ugh. And then even the second death too is so, I mean, obviously accidental, they both are, but just so much.
It also looks like maybe they didn't know how to kill the witch or something, and so when something happened, they're like, "Oh, okay, that'll be it. That's how we're gonna kill her."
Yeah,
that's how it happens.
And I love that her whole army is just kind of all of a sudden oh no, we're cool. It's just, because Dorothy's oh my god, and surrounded by all of her goons, and they're like, oh no, we're cool, we're liberated now, thanks girl. This whole movie hashtag thanks girl is every interaction that she has. Oh man, can we also talk about how fabulous Lion was?
Yes,
because I know that you're gonna say, and I love Lion. I love him.
I love Lion in every way. What a great character. But the obvious queer coding, the obviously gay coding of the character with, I mean, specifically language. What was the line where he's saying to have courage is to not be a sissy or whatever? Yeah. So there's a couple moments where you're kind of what is yeah, he does the full tilt. He does the full limp with this use of the word sissy and stuff.
He gets bows in his hair and his curls, and he's just living his best life the whole time. And I
love that.
Yeah.
In this song, he says not to be the queen or the duke, but the king. And I'm that's interesting.
I know. Yeah, it's kind of reiterating this language of coded misogyny, or not even I guess coded misogyny, but specifically anti-feminist. like with that kind of thing where it's more like, especially like if this is a male presenting person, like, well, you can't be female, you can't do that because to do that means to have no courage. And it's like, that's not what that means. Like, I know this is like a storybook thing, but it's going back to like base narrative of when you're telling stories, right? It's like, why are you equating like this incredibly bi-gendered idea of what exists as masc or femme or male or female or whatever? Like, it's just such a silly male thing to do, like such a silly thing. Because I love Lion, but even just those small moments, I was like, oh no, they wrote him a bad part. Because in my head, I'm like, the character is the lion, and I'm like, he's so great. Love that. And I'm like, oh, they gave him a bad line. I don't like that.
Yeah. I mean, I was honestly impressed with how, like, this was the 30s and how, like, flamboyant his character was. And I was just like, I was like, yeah, like, that's cool. But like you said, there were like those little moments where I was like, oh, no, damn it.
Yeah. It was like, because the whole idea is like he's lacking something. Like each one of these characters is lacking something. So for him, he's lacking courage. And to a male character, that means he's lacking masculinity in a way. So like even in the last scene when he's standing there saying goodbye, he's full chest puffed, like super machismo, like a big boy. I'm good, even though I have a soft side that you all saw. Like, it's like very, like, it's just it's so goofy and performative, which I'm still on board 100%, but it is creating this character around the idea that to not be masculine and male presenting is to be weak, which is a bigger conversation about to be femme or female is to be weak, which again, just reiterates patriarchal structures and misogynistic, I guess, approaches to life in general.
Even within a story where it's a 12-year-old girl that's murdering people.
I know.
But to be female is to be weak.
Yeah.
Truly. Right? Isn't that just so bizarre? It's like, it's exceptionalizing violence in this like really bizarre way, but still just like, if it's gay or femme or female, ugh. Like, you know, like, whoa.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because that's the one that they don't really talk about the brains thing a lot. They don't really talk about the needing a heart, but they really like zero in on needing courage, right? And like, I think he has like 2 or 3 numbers about like courage. And I'm like, yeah, yes, give me more. But also like the other things are just as important. Like, why are we focusing on this one so much? You know,
it is a little goofy. Like, I mean, again, it's looking at like who wrote the story, a white guy, like exactly. what centers maleness generally. It's anything that is like violent or masculine. That's like largely at anything else is subject or lower than. Yeah. It's just, it's so predictable and not like, stories can be written better. And I mean, obviously the story was written 140 years ago. When did the bomb one come out? Like in 1870 something? And I know we've come a long way storytelling wise, so I'm not going to like fully jump down on him a little bit and be like, I can't believe that you weren't more inclusive in 1886. You know what I mean? But just to look at the structure of story, I think is important and interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, like the other thing I didn't really like about Lion, for everything I liked about him, was it's just like, if you cry, then you're weak. And the only people I'm going to pick on are people that are weaker than me, you know? Like, of course, cool. But like, yeah, I always hate it when they frame showing emotion and crying and everything as weakness, you know, especially because those are things that are very often feminized. And so I think that's another thing, again, we'll get into it, but I think that's another thing that The Wiz really fucking shined on. So
I think maybe the best part about the story is the wizard. And I don't think I got that when I was a kid, because I remember thinking like, he's only in like the movie for like a few minutes. Yeah. But I'm thinking about something you mentioned earlier, just saying like, and in the end, he's just a fraud. Like, all of this heartache and all of this trouble put their own lives on the line, and it was kind of for nothing. and all they got away with was like what they already had, but now they knew better. I think like that is maybe the coolest thing about the story and makes it the biggest allegory for like everything. That like, yeah, you're going to go through all this stuff, and a lot of the time it's just going to be some asshole behind a curtain making you.
Truly.
Hell yeah.
Right? Like oftentimes the gatekeepers, the ones who hold the power, are literally just yeah. Right.
Not more powerful, just lazier, and has the power to make you do it.
Yep. We're just in the right place at the right time, aren't even fucking qualified. And in the end, they're just going to give you a trophy for something that you already inhabited, right? Because they're not going to enrich your life at all. It's all performative, right?
Yeah.
So.
And it's PR spins too, when it's like a negative thing. When she came back and she's like, fine, I did the impossible thing. I did it. Now own up. And he's like, JK, LOL, come back tomorrow. And she's like, no. And then he's like, okay, but it's been in you the whole time. And it's just like this PR spin of, actually, the gift was this and you had it, but I gave it to you because I gave you enlightenment. And you're like, no, stop it. Stop being fake.
I do like that at the end, he just like pieced out all on his own, right? He's like, I don't know how to stop this. Like, he's supposed to be like a wizard and all this, and he literally can't like even stop his balloon. Like, he can't. Or there was rope on the side of the basket. There was rope there. He could have just thrown that shit down to her. But he's not even that smart. He's not even like a brain wizard.
It also occurred to me, what if the Tin Man, Scarecrow, and Lion let him go off on purpose? Because like immediately after the accident, he was like, well, we were really sad that you were leaving anyway, so you should just stay.
Oh my God, right?
There is a version of this story. I think it's the 1925 one where Dorothy decides to stay in Oz. Because, like, truly, if you think about it, what the fuck is she going back to? I mean, like, Auntie M and, like, everybody is kind of an asshole to her at the farm. They are literally telling her, you're stupid, use your brain. And then he like falls and hurts himself. Have some courage, like stop imagining things and stay out of trouble. And like, then there's this line that Annie M has where she's like talking to like the bad lady, right? And she's like, I'm a Christian, so I can't tell you what I think of you. So she's going back to be oppressed. She's going back to be treated like shit by everybody. Why would you go back, girl?
Well,
asshole lady gonna kill her dog.
Yes. And this is literally right after her aunt literally said like, well, she went to the cops, so we have to listen to her. Like, you don't have to listen to her. Why
also,
are you giving away her dog? Like, this is right after that happened. So it's like, what?
And that lady owns half of the county. So she like paid everybody off. And that totally went way over my head as a kid. And right now I'm like, fuck you, fuck.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my God.
You know? But yeah, she should, I agree. She should have stayed. From now on, whenever I watch this, I'm going to tell myself and think that they all sabotage that and push that wizard dude off so that way they could just hang out some more. Cool.
And then one day she could return to Oz. No, I'm just kidding. I actually haven't seen that movie.
I haven't either. After attempting to save her dog Toto from a snowstorm, Dorothy is whisked away to the magical land of Oz. Dorothy accidentally kills Evermean, the Wicked Witch of the East, and is instructed by Miss One, the Good Witch of the North, to go to Oz and speak to the wizard if she wants to go home.
Along the way, she meets a Scarecrow, Tin Man, and a Cowardly Lion who are all hoping the wizard will help them as well. Through it all, Eveline, the Wicked Witch of the West, is trying to capture Dorothy and Toto for the death of her sister. The wizard ends up being fake, the Wicked Witch melts away. Dorothy clicks her heels together to get back home. She made it back. Everything was okay. Or was it?
Was it?
So,
I mean, actually, this one had a much better ending, I think, because like she's like ready to go home and like take on her life, you know, whereas the other one's like, oh, I'm here back with my hateful family.
Sorry, but now it's like, yeah, she's doing it now. She was so afraid, but now she knows.
I also like the intention of like how it starts, because it's Galinda is the Good Witch of the South, right?
Yes.
I was like, yeah, they switched stuff up a bit.
Yeah. So Galinda, the Good Witch of the South, she is literally the instigator to get her to Oz. Even though she swept up in the snowstorm, you see that clip of her flying, and Galinda kind of gives her the blessing, like, this is where you're going now, and like guides her to Oz. Because right off the bat, if we're seeing this like sort of hesitation, this trepidation, this like crossroads in Dorothy's life, it makes sense for there to be some sort of like, this is something that you need to go through and you will be stronger for it in the end. So to see right at the beginning, there's this guidance. And then at the end, she comes right back to Galinda and the Star Babies and they're all in this room. And she's kind of just like telling her like, yes, this is like, you are it. You have this. You're strong.
Yeah.
You're capable. You are these things that you thought you weren't. I just thought that was so beautiful. That was, to me, a more succinct, more, I guess, beautiful allegory generally than the other one.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because like a lot of that validation came from themselves. So like, you know, like at the end, they weren't given a fucking diploma or anything. It was like Dorothy was telling everybody like, what do you mean? No, you are brave. You are this, you know? And then she ends up getting her validation from this woman who was there kind of like to help her grow and to foster and wasn't just going to give her all the answers, you know? And I really loved that.
Yeah, that occurred to me as I was watching The Wizard of Oz, and I had already accepted that I appreciated parts of this movie. And then like it got to the end, I was like, oh, but The Wizard's End is so much better because they do have Dorothy telling her friends, no, actually, you are smart. Remember all of this stuff. And it makes so much more sense because she actually knows them. She went through this whole journey with them. And she doesn't give them trinkets. She validates them, but also helps them validate themselves. It's not like an external validation. It's internal, really. And like, here is this person that you love and trust telling you, oh no, this is real inside of you. That was so good. And I feel like we got to talk about Richard Pryor. So we've already talked about how the wizard is like this piece of shit asshole. And it's very tongue-in-cheek in The Wizard of Oz. Like, oh, he was a fraud. Oh, it's so funny. In The Wiz, maybe, I'm going to say a million things are perfect about this movie. But one thing that's perfect about it is they really dig into him. Like, after they find out, like, he's a fraud and Dorothy has, like, gone through and she's changed her friends' lives by, like, showing them what they had all along. Afterwards, he was like, do you got any of that for me? And she's like, no! You forgot what you've put us through? And she, like, literally, like, still being nice, she was like, I don't know what's inside of you. You're some random man that we ran into. Like, you're a piece of shit. Like, no, you can stay here and figure your own shit out. And so one of the many things that was perfect is that at least they, like, really dig into the wizard, just saying, like, nah, you're full of shit. Like, realize we could have done all of this without you, and I don't even want to talk about what you put us through. And I love that so much. And Richard Pryor is just, his performance was so perfect for it because you see, like, he does pathetic so well.
Yeah.
He, like, dug into something so real to just show how pathetically nothing he was. And that was so important for me.
No, that performance was fantastic. It was very, because he was a politician, like a failed local politician, right?
Yeah. He has like this little gag. I forgot his real name, but he was like, so-and-so, your best bet to catch that pet.
Yeah.
Always makes me laugh.
Oh, man. Yeah, I love that they did not let him off the hook. And he even, like, he straight up admits, like, I was using you. She was going to find me out eventually. Here, let's just be friends. It's fine. And rather than even entertaining the idea of benefiting from this person and their position of privilege, right? She was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. You are garbage. That was great. I think Wizard of Oz was good. This was excellent. And I think that the way that they did the characters were so well defined and lived in. Like the one that I personally liked the best, I loved all of them, but the one that I really felt was the Tin Man, because he's going through this depression where he's just like, I can't feel anything. I can't even feel pain. And like, people don't realize that's a real thing. I did that, like, you know, where I like try to like hurt myself and I couldn't feel anything because it was just so numb. And he's so like, when he says that he wants a heart and he wants feelings, he's not just talking about love or joy or anything. He's like, I want heartbreak. I want jealousy. I want all of this. I just want to feel something. And I had to pause the movie at that point and was like, okay, well, here we go.
Like even going to the very end in that moment when Dorothy is telling them all, like she's saying goodbye, he's just like weeping in this honest, like it was so real. It was like such a real, authentic, like one tear and then 1, 2, and then he's like trying not to like look at her, but he's also like looking at her because he loves her and is like so proud of her. And at the same, he's just like all of these things. It was that like, seeing him go and his transition, his journey to this moment, that being the culmination of it, to show this love in such an exemplary way, to feel something so intensely, it was gorgeous.
And like, even from the very beginning, he's like, I wish I could cry because tears mend wounds, and like showing that there's strength and vulnerability. This whole movie was like, it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel pain. Just feel it and be here with the people that are here for you. Yeah, oh God, I'm going to cry talking about him.
I know. Like, I've obviously loved this movie my whole entire life, but like, it still had been like kind of what you were saying about The Wizard of Oz. Like, you know, I've seen it a million times. I don't need to watch it again for a long time, until it was my 25th birthday. And I was, I don't know, just like staying up. It was the day before. I remember the time exactly, like 10:45, where I was like, I should watch The Wiz. It's been a while. It's so much fun. And I put it on, and I hadn't watched it in years. And I just like, I wasn't even, it was right at You Can't Win that I was just bawling, just like out of control. Like, I knew I love this movie, but I thought I just liked the songs at the end. But like, totally at that moment you were talking about, where it's just like, this is so incredibly deep, just this commentary on pain and the different ways that it manifests in all of our lives. Like, I really hadn't thought as deeply about the Tin Man as you were just saying, even though like I loved that character, and I always loved how he talked about how he wishes he could just like sit around and be vulnerable for an afternoon. Like, I always loved that, but it was particularly the Scarecrow and You Can't Win and all of the crows around him that were just like tearing him down constantly. And like, to the extent where they're like, no, it's not even worth it getting down off of this painful pole that you're hoisted up on forever. And like, the way that warps someone's mind, you know? And so like, all of those layers, and then that with Michael Jackson's beautiful performance.
Yeah.
I just out of control brawling.
Well, even like, if we're looking at just the character himself, like we were saying, the idea of he's stuffed with like all this ripped up newspaper and books and pages and stuff, but he's literally reaching inside of himself to pull these little quotes, even if he doesn't necessarily know what it means now. If we're talking about the impact and the weight of words and the weight of sort of self-assuredness, or the discovery of self-assuredness or confidence in this way, you're seeing him literally take these words out of himself, physically out of himself, to read them, to say, you know what? They say negativity is the night of the mind, or they say whatever this, like, seeing these small moments, even if he doesn't remember it now or know what it means now, it's in him. He has it. He has within himself that strength, this wisdom, even if he does not and cannot necessarily compute it in a way that is cognizant. He has the strength within him. He's had it the entire time. He's had it forever.
Yeah,
so good.
That layer that Michael Jackson brought to it, where like his performance was so delicate, you know, like you could see like this is a person that's been beaten down so much that even if like they're the ones who possess all the knowledge, like he literally possessed all of those great words inside of him, that he still thinks that he's an idiot and still thinks he's a complete failure and there's no use in trying. Like there is just such honesty that like I don't think we ever would have fully known that Michael Jackson like fully felt that way, you know?
Yeah.
That is like there's no way he could have done that performance if he hadn't fully like already knew that feeling. Yeah, of like shrinking so much.
Absolutely. Like seeing his performance, the way he moved, the way he talked, like you said, like the way that he was able to inhabit this character and this character's pain was just, and still throughout all of that, put a smile on his face, you know, like, and show that like that earnest, like, I still want more, but you know what? Maybe this is it. This is where I'm at. And Dorothy seeing that and just being like, come on, I'm going to help you up. I'm going to do this, you know, and like just truly being there for somebody that needs that, you know, like listening to the crows, like just being so manipulative and like the crow commandments where it's stop reading, obey, stay where you are. You can't win, you can't leave. And just like having somebody else come in and be like, I see you. You can do more. Come, like, you know, even if you can't stand up right now, it's okay. I got you. I'm not going to let you fall again.
Yes. Like, I love when she comes in and shoos all the crows away. It's so perfect. And I was thinking of this moment when you were talking about in The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy's just like openness to make all of these friends, and it's childlike and it's also refreshing. And I feel like this moment between Dorothy and the Scarecrow and the Wiz, it's different. It's not so much just like, oh, she was walking around and she was like, oh, I'll make a friend with that person. It's she was passing by. She saw all of these people tearing him down, and she empathized with that. She knew exactly what that felt like. And she knew that, oh, all he needs to do is stop listening to them. And so she made a friend through that like empathy connection. And that is just such a beautiful part that the Wiz adds to the story.
She, kind of bringing it back to what we were talking about earlier, where it was like, you know, when you see something, like, don't be surprised, like, say something, stand up, right? She was outnumbered. She was all of that. All she saw was somebody that was hurting, somebody that wasn't even asking her for help or anything, but just recognized what was happening and made the choice to go and help. And I think that is truly like, this Dorothy was courageous.
And again, I love her so much because they had already laid the foundation that in her own life, she's incredibly insecure. She is anxious about making choices in any way. And like, had she been the Scarecrow on that pole, like she probably would have stayed up there just like he was planning to. Mm-hmm. But that because she saw it and she recognized that feeling, was like, oh no, like I'm going to stop this. And I see that as part of this story. It builds up the story even more because it shows like these are all of the real concrete times where like, yeah, Dorothy really was brave and smart and did all of these things. And like, of course she was much more powerful than she thought she was in her own life, but she needed to come to this fantasy place to really be able to see that in action.
Yeah, because especially early on, we're seeing the groundwork. Like she's introduced as a teacher. We're getting this backstory of her being a teacher and making that move to go teach somewhere else. So within her, she has that capacity to teach others, to show people what they have inside themselves and to grow together and separately. Like she has that within her. So seeing her in every one of these moments excel towards a higher version of that already wonderful person in these ways that like you said, like, and in her home, maybe it's something that she wouldn't necessarily have done, but in this space, she saw it, she did it, these acts of courage. And then at the end, to be able to go through those actions and then say and show her new friends, like, you have that. You have these things. Like, I've been doing it and I see you do it. I see us all do it. Like, you have the strength that you think you don't. You know what I mean? And that's one of the beautiful things of like the best teachers I've ever had. It's never been somebody who's been so stringent or strict as far as like, this has to be the way. It's more so, let's find your way. What do you resonate with? It's allowing to grow with the knowledge instead of it being thrown at you. And that's what she's doing with all of these characters.
Yeah. And on top of that, being able to see, like, especially in the case of the Scarecrow, like seeing these people constantly cutting him down and being able to not be like, well, you shouldn't have listened to them, this is kind of on you, but just being like, no, like, they were the problem. Like,
yes,
not the problem. Like, that is a very talented thing for a teacher to be able to do.
Yeah, it is. It is like, I never even thought about that, just because Dorothy was such an empathetic and kind person in this story. Yeah. I never once thought like she would ever victim blame in this situation. But it's true. That's not the case with so many people. It would be like, well, you chose to stay up there. It's kind of on you. Like, why didn't you get down? Why didn't you act? It's like, no, it's not my action. I'm reacting. It's their action. Like, this is... Yeah, I didn't think about it in that context. That's so cool.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either. That adds so much more depth to that and makes that scene so much better. Like, it was already great, and then like just adding that little bit of a layer just to say, like, I'm so conditioned to be like, I'm the problem, right? That like seeing somebody else be like, no, you're not the problem. These people are the problem for doing this to you. Like, oh, that's great. That's so great.
Let's talk about the Cowardly Lion before we really dig into Dorothy. So it was cool kind of hearing you guys say that, like, when you were kids watching The Wizard of Oz, the lion was your favorite, because the lion was my favorite in The Wiz. Like, you know, when you're a kid and you only get bits and pieces of the story, like, 100% Cowardly Lion. Yes, it was amazing.
What was the acronym he had? IOBK?
Incapable of being king.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
He's like
mirror that was like a lion roaring. I was like, oh my God, I need that mirror.
Yes.
That's exactly. I have this in my notes. I need this mirror. This mirror, though, it's in all caps.
Oh man.
And like the whole time he's just kind of like, I like that he's like hidden inside of a stone, right? And you just kind of like see his eyeballs, right? So like that's kind of like his armor. And then when he decides to like pray. Also, I want to talk about or mention that he's in front of like a very official looking building, right? Like it's like some sort of like city hall or something, whereas everybody else we found is in like an abandoned place or this, but he's in like an official place, right? And so he comes out and he's like, "Roar, I'm doing this." And he's very easily diffused, right? And then later on, like his first reaction when they're in the posies, he gets like really down on himself and is about to jump off the side of the building.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And that's another area where Dorothy was just like, it's okay. I see you. Just keep trying. You are what you are. It's okay. Like,
I usually skip over the Poppy scene in The Wiz. One, because I was a very like self-censoring kid. Like if there was something that I was like too adult for me, I'm like, I better not watch.
I was the same way as a kid. If it was bad and my friends were gonna watch it, I'd be like, hey, you guys, like I don't think I can. I probably can't.
Like, I remember telling friends like, oh, my mom doesn't want me watching MTV.
Yeah. All of the songs in this were absolutely fantastic. Like the song, You Can't Win is probably my favorite, But then when Dorothy sings that last song at the end, it's just called Home.
Yeah, it's
And
just home.
It's like the one shot where she's on this like this moving platform, or it looks like it's moving, and then all the characters, all of her like her journey, you're seeing every character she's seen.
It's just Diana. It is so fantastic.
And the tears. Like
she's killing it.
The cry acting in this movie was so incredible. Like the perfect moment. It's like right after the first line, she like takes a beat. And then there's just like one single tear down. And then she continues. And I'm like, you choreographed your tears.
In that close-up, it's like right before the like last big note. Like, I'm not a music person. I'm sure there's like a term for it. But right before the last big note, she gets this look like, I'm about to fuck this up.
She does.
My favorite moment. Like, so you go back and look for that look, like it's right before it, and she's just like, you guys aren't even ready for what I'm about to do to you. And like, she has like 500 teeth, like that moment. So amazingly beautiful. And I'll just like be clutching a pillow and be like, yes, let's go home.
No, she was so good. Just the music in general, like everything was so good. It was great. I like Eric's talked about this movie in such a positive way for so many years. Mm-hmm. I'm really happy I finally watched it.
Yeah, like it honestly baffles me when people like in all seriousness are like, oh, that's a terrible movie. I'm like, you have not watched it. Like I don't believe that you've actually seen the same movie I have seen, because how could you ever come to that conclusion?
Yeah.
That is how deeply I feel about the music in particular. Home is on my playlist regularly because it's a very, very important song. If you didn't get a chance to like really listen to the words, I highly recommend it. Another good thing to connect with, just like Home, the song. I don't know if you guys are fans of the show Pose, but there's a beautiful episode in the first season where they're visiting lovers and friends in the AIDS unit, and they sing Home for them.
That's where it's from.
So good, and just like in that particular context, like there's no way you can watch it without crying, snotting everywhere. But it's such an important song.
I didn't realize that's where it was from, because I'm halfway through season 2 of Pose. Okay, I need to go back and watch that episode now too.
In season 1, they just sing Home, and oh god,
so good.
It's a must, because in the song itself, it starts off saying like, when I think of home, I think of a place where there's love everywhere. I think of all of these things. But as she goes on, she kind of talks about how like she was so afraid to live life and afraid that home was too far away. But then she learned more about herself and learned that she can go home anytime that she wants. And it kind of connects with another part of the movie that is my actual number one favorite. So when she's talking to Glinda the Good Witch, Lena Horne, so it's after like she just did that amazing part where she told all of her friends that like they had what they had. And I happen to know Lena Horne's like monologue exactly, if you would bear with me, but it's so important.
We're here for this.
She says, Dorothy, you were wise and good enough to help your friends see what was inside of them all along. The same is true for you. And Dorothy goes, home inside me? I don't understand. And she was like, well, home is a place where we all must find, child. It's not just a place where you sleep or eat. Home is knowing your mind, knowing your heart, knowing your courage. When we know ourselves, we're always at home. And then she goes into her song, When You Believe, which I have another whole thing about. But so it's so important. And like we talked about how The Wiz tells the story better. And so that is like the crux of the movie for me that I always loved, is that it didn't fully make sense in The Wizard of Oz, where it's like, oh, you had the power to go home all along. How was she supposed to know that those shoes could do that? They just kept making a big deal about the shoes and they didn't really do anything. But in The Wiz, she explains that, like, no, the power to go home is because home is knowing yourself. You have the power just from understanding your strengths, understanding what you can do, and knowing what you've survived. Like, that is where the power comes from. And it's just like my favorite moment in like all of film. I have it tattooed, actually.
Do you?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
This says home is knowing. I don't know if you guys can see on the thing.
Yeah.
But it's such a perfect message for me, you know? It's just saying, like, no, all of us are searching for home in some way, you know? Like, we're searching for home in our identities, in our physical spaces. We're searching for home in all of these things. But, like, home is knowing yourself and loving yourself. Like, that is all that you need, and that is always available to you.
That's awesome. That is so beautiful. Oh my gosh. I guess because it 100% is impactful when I watched it, but just like hearing you retell, it's so impactful and also so telling of such a wonderfully written story.
Yes.
You know?
100%. Also, I have to talk about Lena Horne's performance. Like, she gets like a little half song. It's like a minute and a half. And it's like some of the most intense performance in the whole movie. If you go back and watch it, like, before I realized that Home was as amazing as it was, I was all about If You Believe. Because in it, it's like she does like these hand signals, like I'm doing it for you guys, where like she's singing and it's like literally like you can see like she's contorting her hands to like really send this message to you. And like the message is like, fucking believe in yourself. like, and it's almost like she'll hurt you if you don't recognize how amazing you are. And like, there's a line that's like, and you're going to believe all these things. You're going to believe that you're powerful and beautiful and amazing. And you're going to believe them not because I told you to. And she gets this crazy look in her eye, like you're going to go and see it. And she goes, not because I told you to. And it's like, it's so intense and I love it so much. Like, you feel like you can almost like reach in and hug her because she's like saying it to you, like saying like, of course you had all of this inside of you, and if you don't believe it, I'm gonna hurt you. Like, you have no idea what you are wasting by not acknowledging that power within you. And like in the song, she was like, and just one day you're gonna realize it and you're just gonna grab it for yourself, and that's it.
And you're going to know forever. Yeah.
I was like, and you're just going to have that power forever. And like that happens even before Home.
Yeah, because she like tells her, I think like verbatim, she says, you need to get out of this room and let people see you. And like when we first see Dorothy, like she's in the home and she's like, you know, there's so much joy and so many people and she's aiding in that and she's like helping people, making sure that they're there. And then whenever she's there and she sits down, then she's like, no, this isn't for me. And she excuses herself from that joy. She never allows herself to participate, right? She goes back to this other room and she's like, she's so disconnected. She's like outing herself. And so when Lena Horne like tells her like, get out of that room and let yourself be seen, that like really just drove that home. And then with that song and then with Home, and I was like in tears and I was like, Look, I'm glad I watched Wizard of Oz first because this is a much better movie. How the fuck has nobody seen, like everybody needs to watch this movie.
Yeah. How I feel very much. And like, so in the beginning scene before they go to Oz, in my rewatching in like the last few years, there's lots of really good nuance in it. So like it starts off and like they're having this big family dinner and everyone's coming in and it's so perfectly warm. It's like if you personally were there, you would probably be having like the time of your life because like we're going to have some amazing food and everyone's laughing and joking. But then like you see Dorothy and like she draws herself in so much. She's serving everybody, but it's like away so she doesn't have to like sit down and enjoy herself. You see these other like young people, they're like off in a closet making out, like catches them and sends them back to the table. And you also, like, I missed this my whole entire life, but there's also a part where like someone brought somebody for Dorothy to meet. And so he's waiting to like actually meet her and stuff like that. But she's running around giving everybody like a drink and going off in the kitchen to avoid it. And she sings this like little mini song to herself that was just like, I have no idea about the feeling that they're talking about. All of this terrifies me. What is this? And it's just such this like perfect thing that I always missed when I was a kid. But like, I finally really saw it right when I was like turning 25 and rewatching it. And I was just like, that's life right there. Like, you know, like she has a college degree, she has a job, and you know, I was right at that place where like this life is supposed to be working now. I did the right things. Why isn't it working? Why is it still super terrifying? And just like seeing her in that place, and I was just like, I get it, Dorothy. Like I don't get any of this either.
Yeah.
I love so much that she's 25 and still has no fucking clue what she wants out of life. Because, like, you know, when you're a kid, you think 25 is grown.
Yeah.
But then all of us experience when we do get to, like, you know, the age that we thought we were grown, and we look around and we're like, oh no, I have no idea what I'm doing. This is bullshit. Please, someone help me.
Truly. Well, even comparing, like earlier you were saying that her performance of like when she gets to Oz, seeing her so hesitant and scared and trepidatious, everything is new and frightening and terrifying. And it's that like the idea of starting something new, even at like that age in life, is supposed to be like adventurous and like exciting. Yeah. But in reality, oftentimes it's neither. It's terrifying and it's so anxiety inducing and just all of it. So seeing her like at home and kind of already being a little bit anxious, a little bit hesitant, kind of shy.
Yeah.
Then throwing her into this brand new world of all of these new things. And her reaction is so organic. It's so just like, I don't, oh, okay, sure. And they're like, you killed her. She's like, okay. Oh, okay. Like, I don't know what that means here. Like, sure. I'm sorry. They're like, no, it's great. She's like, okay, I guess it's great. Like, sure. Like, I don't know. And it was just her eye work also is so good. Like Diana Ross just looking around at everything, like just trying to process, but it's also so hard to fathom whatever's happening.
Also, like, the skirt she is wearing is like the most magical skirt ever, because it's like it is at once like this light dancey thing, but it's still heavy enough that, like, I know editing, whatever, but it's heavy enough that it never like flies up in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like I zeroed in on that, like, as a little girl, just being like, that skirt is perfect. I need one I can dance around in and have to show my underwear to people.
Well, and like you were saying, like her first song is very mousy and very quiet, right? Compared with Home, which is just fucking out there. If you haven't seen it, at least YouTube that, because like it is the most I am here, I am now, I know myself, right? Like all of that. And I can't think, like I didn't even realize, because this is the only time I've ever watched it and it won't be the last, but like seeing like that her first song is so mousy, because like by the end of this, she is a different person and she is so empowered and so like fully her, and that's such a great way to like introduce and end that story.
100%.
I also wanted to bring up too, with her dress, when she is flying into Oz. Eric was watching it with me when I was starting it, so we were watching it together. He pointed out the coat that she throws on to go get Toto in the snowstorm. You don't really see the inside of it until she's flying to Oz, but at a certain moment the jacket flies off. And the interior of the jacket is the gingham print from Dorothy's original dress.
Oh, I never noticed.
Oh, I did not.
So the inside is the pattern of her original dress, because she doesn't have that print on her dress in this one.
Yeah.
So it's almost like as she's flying to it, she's like shedding herself of this old ideal of what this person in character is.
Wow.
I love that.
Yes. Like we have to talk about the sets, because they're so perfectly beautiful. Like I still, like the old artwork, I still have it on like my iPad and stuff like that. But the beautiful details of like making it this like urbanized version where like the Munchkins were like kids just playing in the park doing like graffiti and stuff like that. And then like, there's so many beautiful backgrounds that are really easy to miss, that are like these paintings, I guess, of like condemned buildings, but it's like they bring out this beauty in it. And like, so they add to the scariness of the scene, but it's also just really beautiful art that worth going back and taking another look at.
Yeah, like that first scene, or right before she meets the Scarecrow, where she sees that guy kind of come out, the guy they meet at the subway later, when he's carrying that like tray, and she's like, wait, that whole scene was so scary. But when she's walking past those buildings, you're seeing like this almost beautiful sunrise behind this building that looks like it's about to collapse. So like that juxtaposition of beauty and decay together, it was gorgeous.
And also like the talent too. Like this is a amazing cast, and you know that they're talented because they're also not doing a lot of cheap stuff, right? Like I was watching this with my husband and we were like in awe at how much of the shots were continuous takes. It's like 5 minutes of footage and no cuts, no nothing, you know, like, and it's a big dance scene where they're stepping on top of the cabs and stuff. And like one person falls, that's it, you know, or like there's like 60 people that are dancing, like, you know, this loved its group ensembles, you know, which was so beautiful. But like everybody like had to be on top of it in order to get those shots, the like the people behind it, the people on screen and all of that. And just the way that they inhabit those characters, and that for like, so it's like they were living it, and it really brings you in a way where it's not those cheap shots where it's like, oh, and then this, and then this, and then this. It really like makes it feel lived in and makes you feel like you're there in that moment, which I really appreciated.
I do want to talk a little bit about the underlying capitalism narrative that was in this. I know we brought it up a little bit before, but just like capitalism as a generalized evil within Eveline's sweatshop, which also Eveline was so cool. Like that whole scene, that song, that dance, like all of it was so good. But like you're going from like when she gets there, it's sort of like a part of the city that's been forgotten, essentially. Yeah. You're seeing that, and then you're seeing all of these kids. There's still joy here. There's all of these things. But as she progresses, you're starting to see more and more wealth until they cross the Brooklyn Bridge. They get to Oz. That's the Brooklyn Bridge, right? I think so. They get to Oz, and then they get in there, and it's fashion, it's wealth, it's all of these things. It is the best, most enriched version of this city that she's been in. And even within that, the only reason she gets to go up and talk to the wizard is because of the shoes. I think that's when I got this. I took this more so when I was looking at the last one, where I was like, well, the only reason they let him in is because of the shoes. Whereas this felt more of an intentional choosing to be like, because when they get to the door, the guards say the service entrance is around back. There's an assumption that they're delivering something. It's kind of like you don't belong here, you're poor kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But then they see the shoes and it's like, oh, come on in. Like, you have wealth. Let's go. Let's do this. And then seeing the sweatshop aspect of Eveline being the witch and evil and driving this labor, driving this profit, she's adorned in the most embellished, like, medals and buttons and jewels and everything, just like adorned and literally dripping in wealth and conglomerate of collection. Like, she has so much. It's like we're seeing a visual, so much happening. And then seeing when she being like, say she is like the top of capitalism, when she's gone, there's the whole scene where like they're all taking off their worker masks. They're all taking off they're
shedding their skin.
They're literally shedding their skin.
The bondage of capitalism.
I know. And I was just so like, because for a story that was basically talking about like, it's like the Gilded Age or the exchange of currency.
Yeah, it was all about like take the silver slippers to Emerald City, which was like DC, and exchange rate and stuff like that, and what would we build this country off of? And
so for a story that has its like origins in this sort of allegory for money, an exchange of money, to then write in this idea of capitalism being evil and exemplifying that in this beautiful way, I was so impressed and surprised.
And having it be like the underlying, because like the whole time you like, because like you see the crows are working for her, the people from the posy patch, right? And all of this, like.
And I don't know if you noticed this, but Evermean, the sister that was killed when Dorothy came, she was the Parks Department commissioner. And so like she was a politician.
Oh,
no
dang.
shit.
Yes. Miss One that comes down, she explained, she was like, oh yeah, she was the Parks Department commissioner. I think she said something like she had given us all tickets or like, you know, banned us all from the park. But now that she's dead, we can come back. And also, as you were talking about, like, just like the capitalism layer, I think about how, like, you know, Miss One, like, she asked her if she wanted to, like, play some numbers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, man. I really loved that. I loved that, like, the real villain of the story, we didn't even really, because, like, in the other one, the Wicked Witch of the West is just fucking there, and we know it, right? And she's always, like, we know that she's kind of, like, there plotting. But in this one, we don't even really get her until the very end. And then she comes out and she just has this beautiful dance number and everything. And then she's like kind of flushed down the toilet when she's
oh my
like,
God.
I loved that.
Because you don't even notice that her throne looks like that. And then as soon as she sinks down and the toilet lid shuts, you're like, oh my God, it was a toilet. Oh, no.
And of course she lives in the sewer. Of course, this all makes so much sense, you know. But I was still so impressed that like all of the little sub-villains like reported to her and they were all suffering at her hands, you know, where she's saying like, you don't get breaks, you don't get this. Like, you know, she's like being an asshole to everybody and they in turn are perpetuating that. Like, so the perpetual cycle of abuse, right? And so seeing that, I think that was really, really genius. I was blown away.
Yeah, at the end, when, like, you know, the sprinklers are on and they're, like, shedding their skin, that was another time where I was just like, I need to turn my little... This is adult content. And I still feel like a little, like, flush watching that scene. Like, oh my God, they look so naked.
They really, Eric and I were talking about it. I was like, I think some of the guys too even like pulled up their bathing suit a little bit tight too. Cause it was like,
it was like a thong.
And it's also in the choreography because they're like pulsing out.
Yes.
It's like very sexual movements on purpose, but it's like that was fully communicated to me as a child. And I was like, this is... risque.
Yeah. I know what's happening. Man. I will not be participating right now. Please let me know when you're done. Oh, like I am so impressed by this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also because like crying kind of saves the day, like we were talking about, like where, you know, showing vulnerability and knowing yourself and all of those things all like kind of culminate into that. Even when like, you know, I was thinking about the chase scenes whenever they run up against like the motorcycle dudes or in the subway, right? They all get separated. And I was thinking about like how you have a group and everybody's going through something at the same time and you're just kind of like, it's okay. I see you. I got you, you know, even though you're all kind of running in different directions and everything. But then eventually like one person like is able to like go and get connected with the other person and the other person is able, and you're all able to like kind of like help each other through that kind of experience, you know? And again, just like being able to be vulnerable and be like, man, I was scared. Man, I'm glad that you're okay. And just really own all of that. And I think they did just a better job of like also showing like that you need other people in order to make it through. And that was a huge strength, you know?
Yeah, I love that part of it too.
This was a great movie. I'm so glad that you suggested this.
Yeah.
Like Eric has, when I was over at their house, he showed me the subway scene and I was terrified. But I've wanted to watch this and I couldn't be more delighted to talk about this with somebody that loves this so much. Like, I feel like I love this even more. Just hearing you talk about it, yeah, thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This has been awesome.
Like, and this was so much easier than like furiously typing it into Twitter. Trying to do, because every once in a while people will just pop up talking shit about the Wiz and I'm like, I can't believe it. I'll, like scream. So this was very cathartic for me.
So we made it all the way back here from Oz. So Eric, for the 1930s Wizard of Oz, who was it for?
I'm going to say it's for men in Hollywood. Just generalized men in Hollywood. I don't really have a follow-up. That was kind of it.
I will say I think it's for, thinking about like the 30s and stuff, I think it's for young women that like just need to believe in themselves a bit more, maybe. But then I'm like thinking about it, I'm like, wait, but she went back home and they all suck. So it's like, yeah, this was made for young women to make them want to stay home and never leave home and fit into your gender role.
Yeah.
Just go home and go, I'm never leaving ever again.
Yeah.
Who do you think this was for?
Children who like bright colors and fun things. Like, there's definitely deeper things that everybody can enjoy, but like overall, distracting children's story.
Yeah.
I'm going to retract my statement. I think it was for men who need validation.
Yeah. There's also that.
Tokens of validation.
Yeah.
But I think we're all correct. Okay, Eric, did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it. It's not like my favorite movie, and I like occasionally watching it, I'm like, yeah, that's fun. I love anytime I see that smoke. It's gorgeous on that color. Like that red smoke looked so good every time. So visually, it was eye-catching. The colors were gorgeous. Yeah, I liked it. Like a really solid low level, I like it.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I liked it. I think it's like one of those things where it'll just be like, if it was on, cool, I'll watch it, but I won't really like pay attention. But like, I still am like kind of captivated by the way like Scarecrow moves, you know, and like just the little details like that. And looking at the story and being like, wow, all of these people inhabited it and they're not beating it over our heads and stuff like that. I think if you like cut it when they got Dorothy and then just take out like the wizard, like that whole part, like where she's about to go home, cut all that out. We don't need that validation. Just save Dorothy and she lives there. Like, I would have liked this movie a lot better. But yeah, I liked it.
What do you think, Amber? Did you like it?
I liked it. And I'm so shocked to say that.
Because this is on record.
It's real. Like, my name is on this.
Yes.
Never would have guessed. Never. Like, even as I was watching it, and like she sings Somewhere Over the Rainbow like really early.
Oh, yeah.
Thinking that this whole movie was just that song, I'm like, what the hell? If she just sang the song, does she sing it again at the end? And I was like wondering that, and so like still prepared to thinking it was like totally stupid. And I didn't. I liked it. It was funny.
It was cute.
It is jarring how quickly that song comes. Because it is iconic, and then it's like 30 seconds in, she's like, somewhere, and you're like, what? Wait, hold on.
All right, what about The Wiz? Eric, was this new, interesting, or the same? Progressive, regressive? Has it evolved with today's ideals?
I think it was new and interesting, just because it took the sort of storybook, easy read, mundane aspects of the first and amplified it. Like I said earlier, with, I think I used the word atmosphere, like so much atmosphere and nuance and character, and it really just enriched a lot of what felt bland about the first one. So I thought it was interesting and new in that way. And then also progressive just in its B-plot of capitalism as a generalized evil. That's great. That's huge. That's like amazing. And that's not even any of the character stuff for the most part. Like, but if we're looking into the nuance and emotion of the character stuff, then that's like a whole nother thing. So like, I think it was, I thought it was very progressive in the way that it has progressed the story from where it once was to where it is now. I say now very loosely because this movie came out 40 years ago. Because that it's not now, it's really old. Right. But even some of the story elements are still ring true and are still very much of the present day.
Yeah. What do you think, Amber?
I would agree. Like, at first when I think like the word progressive, I was like, I don't know if I would like put that on The Wiz so much.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it like pushes boundaries in that sense. But at the same time, I do like the kind of undercurrent story of capitalism. And I also, I think about it in terms of what it says about like racial identity and racial experiences. And like that is another beautiful layer that I appreciate it for. And so in that, I think that it is progressive, but especially in like looking at different people's reactions to the movies, like that's not on the surface enough for it to fully be a progressive movie. Like, I feel like it's what people have seen in it. It's definitely there on purpose, but it's easy to miss.
Yeah, I think you're both correct. I agree with what you're saying. Like, it was new and interesting, and I was so delighted, and like I didn't check my phone during the movie. I was there for it, captivated. I think compared to the first one, I think it was more progressive, like not obviously by today's standards, but like it was more progressive because I love the embracing of emotion, like we were talking about, and the depth that the characters had, like talking about capitalism and suicide and how this affects everybody around, not just you, but like the entire city. I really, really, really loved it. And again, like Wizard of Oz was very, very white, so having so much wonderful talent on screen that wasn't white people was wonderful.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies that I'm just like, It was great, and I love seeing so much joy and some even in the hard moments, seeing that camaraderie, and it was a delight. Who do you think it was for, Eric?
I think The Wiz was just generally for the Black community. Because I feel like with most cinema then and now, everything is so white-centric or Euro beauty standard-centric. Everything is so centralized and localized around the idea and the existence of whiteness that to see a movie, especially one that is so well written underneath the umbrella of self-love, I mean, yeah, it was for the Black community by and large. Is what, to me, because again, it's not a movie localized around whiteness. And that's I mean, you can't say that for more than like 95% of all media everywhere, you know?
What do you think, Amber?
Like my first thought when you asked the question, I was like, it's for me. Like, they made it for me because it has brought so much love into my life. But at the same time, like hearing what Eric said is that I think about all the times in the movie where they were essentially like sending this message of like, I see you and I understand what you're going through. And all you need is just a little bit of encouragement in this, and you can do this yourself. That being like this beautiful love letter to the Black community, especially. And it ties with all of like the little kind of undercurrents of the story of like, you know, from the monkskins, I can't say that right now, that were just like kids playing in the park who were terrorized by the park commissioner, to the people working in a sweatshop that were terrorized again by this like capitalistic system, and just being like, you know, we see you and we can see all of the ways that we can at least fantasize about freedom from these oppressive systems. And in that, learn even more about ourselves and learn how much power we had all along. It's a beautiful, beautiful message.
Yeah. I agree. I can't say anything that either of you said any better. I think you guys really, really nailed that. Did we like it?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I was so impressed. I'm really happy I finally saw it. Again, I've heard nothing but good things about it, so I'm happy to see those good things actualized in a way that I connected with, you know. It was a beautiful story, a great lesson in storytelling, a great lesson in just like, again, self-love. Like, I feel like so much, like, oftentimes that kind of element is missed, or it's a narrative centralized around like, you need to help yourself or whatever, but it's like, this is not that. It's, you have the capacity, you have to find it, but it's all centered around love and joy, which is gorgeous. It's just, it was very good. If you really, like, truly, if you have not seen this movie, it's absolutely worth the watch in so many ways. It's also worth the rewatch, because I'm probably going to watch it again.
Oh, for sure.
It's very good. Yeah.
And I feel like we so rarely get like a good retelling, you know, a good purposeful retelling. And I think that's exactly what this is. Like you guys said, like it was done with intent. Even the small pieces, you know, the small little bits, you know, there was so much nuance in all of the characters and in the city itself and in the politics of the city that I feel like this is a film that you can watch time and time again and get something out of it every single time. And that's not easy to do, especially when taking something that is so loved and so like presumably untouchable, right? As like The Wizard of Oz, you know, whenever people try to remake things, they usually don't do it with this much love and care. And I would tell people to watch this before they watch Wizard of Oz. I would say, this is a better movie. This is the heart. Like 100% watch this movie if you haven't. It's such a delight. It's such a treat. And yeah, listen to the soundtrack. Ooh. How about you, Amber? We know this is your favorite.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. It's definitely like a family thing for me. I grew up not realizing that other people didn't watch it as often as we do. But yeah, I feel like it's a movie that you have to really approach on its own I don't think that you really gain anything from comparing it too harshly to The Wizard of Oz, because in it you lose so much. Like, I remember listening to NPR, like, this was just a few months ago maybe, where like one of the last actors that was a child playing one of the Munchkins in the original had died, and so like they were talking about the legacy of The Wizard of Oz. And like they had like this one comment where they brought up the Wiz. They were like, yeah, I don't really understand it. Like, how is Dorothy 25? And like I was in my car and I wanted to like drive off the road. I was so mad. I was like, you can't do that. You can't just say like, oh, how is a 12-year-old all of a sudden 25? Like, you have to like let it be its own story and talk about like the similarities, but you can't just be like, well, I love The Wizard of Oz, so this better be exactly like it, because it's just not. And like you're gonna miss the absolute genius of Dorothy being 25 and the genius of Michael Jackson playing the Scarecrow. It's perfect.
Yeah. I can't believe people don't like this movie. I will fight somebody if they tell me they don't like this movie, because it's like, I feel like that is the same kind of argument as like, well, Ariel's white, right? Like, what do you mean? She's a fictional character, you know? Like, also, like, this is not called The Wizard of Oz, right? This is something different. This is a different entity. Let this be its own thing. Like, you don't own this, and like creative owners and like, you know, like fans and toxic fandom. And yeah, I can't believe that nobody would like this movie. You're wrong if you don't like it.
I know that a lot of my like resentment towards The Wizard of Oz over the years has stemmed from this assumption that goes on a lot in our culture, that anything that is exclusively Black or something that is made for Black people is worse, or anything that Black people love specifically is just not as good. And so I always had a chip on my shoulder, especially for this movie, because I'm like, there is no way, just like no freaking way, that The Wizard of Oz is better than this. There's just none. And so I kind of taken it upon myself to like never give in.
Yeah.
But then also it makes me think of how much people lose by not trying things from different perspectives. That like you can take this iconic story, like, you know, the same general like structure of the story, and tell another completely different story just by adding this layer of a different racial experience. And people not knowing, or like really in our culture not being taught that like that is something that's really rich in as far as experiences are, that like sometimes stories are completely different if all the characters are Black. Like sometimes stories are completely different in a really, really awesome way if all of the characters are coming from a different context, a different perspective. And like that is, for me, just so much more fun.
Well, absolutely, right? Like imagine if this all-Black cast tried to do exactly what The Wizard of Oz did. It would feel so disingenuous and bizarre. Like it would it would not work. So by allowing creatively the honesty and organic aspects of filmmaking that this movie has within it, you get this entirely different product, like you were saying, but it's great. It's this beautiful thing that is absolutely different, but that's what makes it beautiful, or part of what makes it beautiful, is its difference.
And so I'm always down for like gender bending a character.
Yes.
Race bending a character, because I'm like, let's see what happens.
Yeah, right?
Like it's just interesting.
It's just cool because it's, again, you're giving yourself a new approach to a new story, right? Like even if one small thing has changed, like say you make a character gay in a story, or more of a queer perspective of a narrative that's familiar, the entire context of that story is going to be different because your character. You're, as an audience, you're seeing it through the eyes of this hero. So within that, their version of this is going to be completely different than if they were straight or cis or what have you. You know what I mean? That's the beauty of, that's so awesome. That's what's awesome about like the complete unique aspects of each person who lives. Like every version of this life is different. Like that's amazing.
Yeah, and it's such a crime that there are so many people who would never hear about it. Like, you know, most white people I meet didn't know that The Wiz existed.
Yeah.
It's like you are missing out so much. And I mean that like more on just like this individual good movie level, but you're also missing out on, I guess, like practice for thinking about things from different perspectives. Like,
absolutely, yeah.
There is so much you miss out of life because you don't seek out those stories. And like, we all would be better if you did.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I think, and just generally too, the idea, like you were saying, that the black version of something is generalized in American or westernized culture, the bad version of it.
Yeah.
It's so true. It is so like that being a part of the culture is so toxic. And absolutely, like this specifically, for instance, is what a triumph of a movie that I think generally for especially a lot of white people is just automatically assumed bad because of systemic racism and the assumed badness of blackness, which is just like, what the fuck? Like, it's a great movie.
Yeah, the assumption is like, obviously I can live without it. So like, how could that have anything that could improve my life in it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, how could that be anything that I need? And it's just like, you're missing out on so much. Like, there's lots of things to unpack in that particular worldview, but it's just also the bottom line is you're missing out on the best stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, truly.
Oh my God, Amber, this was so fun.
Yay!
Thank you for being here. I'm so excited we finally did this. This is what a treat. Just like an absolute treat. This was. Thank you.
Fun. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you so much for listening. You can write into us at NOTstalgiaPodcast@gmail.com. Give us suggestions, ask us questions, talk about stuff. I don't know. We're here for all of that. And we would like to say a special thanks to David Tercero for providing tech support, Danny Barkley for editing our podcast. And thank you, Amber, and thank you, Eric. This is great.
Thank you.
Okay, well, everybody stay cute.
And stay critical.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Boop, 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 ba-doop.